Hiya, Mike, best-selling writer. Delighted to be
Hello.
chatting with you.
Nice to be talking to you.
Yeah. How's life in Carlisle?
It's nice and grey and cold, and we're going out straight after this for another event. So we're going to be walking in the. I'm hoping it'll stay dry because I don't want my hair to get wet, obviously.
I've been to Carlisle a few times. My sister used to live there. She had a cafe in the high street, just about 5-minute walk. You come out the train station, turn right, and the main sort of high street over the road. I think there's Wetherspoons nearby.
Yeah, on Botchergate. I write about it in my in the Poe books. I'm not massively nice about the place.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the few. I've got sort of like a rule that if I'm being unpleasant about an area, I'll usually make it up so that I'm not offending people who actually do live in that area.
Yeah. But
I'll make an exception for Botchergate because anything I can do to budge the council along into tidying it up. And it's not a residential area. Nobody really lives in Botchergate. So.
It's all retail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my sister, I think about 4 years ago, she rang me, she said, put the telly on, put the BBC News on. And there was a boat rowing up her street, outside the house, the flooding.
Yeah. 2015 floods, that would have been, I think.
Yeah.
Because we live quite high up in Carlisle, so the floods never touch us. But obviously, I mean, half the city was submerged in the last one, in the really bad one. It was terrible.
So you're safe?
Yeah, we're safe. So I can enjoy it. I don't need to build an ark anyway.
Okay. If you don't mind, can we split this into two? Maybe talk about your background, your career back in the army, into probation.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about the novels, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So you left school 16, straight into the army. Was that running away?
Sorry?
Was it were you running away? Were you recruited by a?
It sort of it did feel like that to a bit, and it absolutely wasn't my intention. My best friend at school, a fellow called Nick Anstey, wanted to join the infantry.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, to be honest. I knew I didn't want to join the army, but he convinced me to go to the recruiting office with him just for something to do. So I did. And the recruiting sergeant said, we might as well take the test as soon as you're sitting here. So I did, and I ended up joining. I signed on that day to take it further, basically, to go to an assessment centre. And Nick never bothered, and he became a painter and decorator, and has been ever since. And he's a jolly good one, but he never joined the army. I think it was just a trick to get me in. But my dad died when I was 14, and I had so I was living at home with my mum and my two sisters, and my mum did think, is he just wanting to get out of a house for the women? But that absolutely wasn't the case. It was a genuine spur of the moment decision. As was leaving the army, actually, I had no plans, because when I was in, it might be different now, but you had to give a year's notice. You had to sort of sign off, and that was basically on your 12-month countdown. And the army said it was to help get you ready for civilian life, but it wasn't really. It was a retention tool, because you can't go to an employer, get a job, say, right, I need to give 12 months notice, so I'll see you in a year's time. So everyone who leaves the army they're taking a leap of faith, really. And I did the same. I just decided one day, I just did it. I went in, I just signed off and said, right, I've got a year to decide what I want to do.
Yeah. Did you travel the world with him? One of the websites I'm sort of digging out for information on you, it says you were only in the army for 2 years. You did some course and they didn't like it. But I think that's wrong, isn't it? I think you were 16 years.
Yeah. No, I mean, I did 2.5 years of training. I was an armourer. I had a trade, so I was trained to fix weapons, basically small arms, all the way up to mortars and some of the cannons on the smaller tanks, the rod cannon rather than the big sort of caliber tank weapons. And so that was 2.5 years. And then I did about 12 years in total. So I don't know where that 2 years came from. There's a lot of these weird sites that sort of they translate it into their own language and they translate it back. Okay. And you just get all sorts of weird stuff. It's quite funny. It's quite entertaining sometimes.
Yeah, it looked to me like it was cut and paste, from several different other sites with information about yourself.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed my time in the army, but it was a job, and when it was time to go, it was time to go. I was ready to move on, so it was fine.
Okay.
And I travelled a bit and had a bit of fun, drank a lot of beer, made some good friends, but it was never what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be it. I mean, because my uncle was career army. He did the full whack. Then he applied for an extension, and he absolutely loved it. My grandfather, my uncle's father, my mother's father as well. He was a lieutenant colonel in the army in the Raj. So he served a lot of time in India and stuff like that. So it was in the family, but I was never a career soldier like they were.
Okay. So you left the army, then did you go away and you did a degree course in social work? Was that straight after?
Not straight away. I left. I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, actually. Again, spur of the moment decision. I was out with some friends in Newcastle, and I grew up in Newcastle, and when I went home, I just moved back home in with my mum. My sisters had fled the nest by then, one in York, one in Devon. And I was out. It was at Christmas, actually. I'd met up with some of my old army pals, and I was walking past the university. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go back to school, as it were. I'm going to get a degree in something. Yeah. Didn't have a clue what. And I was looking through the prospectus, and I thought law might be quite an interesting one to do. Yeah. But then I saw social work was only 2 years and everything else was 3 years. So I thought, I'll just do that. Yeah. And it was quite a competitive course to get on, but I was lucky. I must have said the right things on the interview panel and on my application form I got on. So, and even then, I mean, I didn't know really what social workers did. So I just thought, well, child protection, that seems to be the thing that everyone says. I want to be child protection. Yeah. Then I was stood in the queue when we were signing up for which I don't know what the proper word is, specialities you want to do, what the additional stuff you wanted to do to build up your degree. Yeah. And I was stood behind this big Scottish fellow called Crawford Bunny, who's my best mate now, actually. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, child protection or something like that. And he said, I'm going to be a probation officer. And I said, what's that? And he said, and he told us what it was. It's about working with criminals, making sure they don't do it again, protecting victims. And I said, oh yeah, I think I'll do that as well. And that's what happened. So I thought, so even by the time I got to the front desk, I'd completely changed all the things I was going to specialize in. Yeah. I was going to do family law and a lot of stuff like that. But by the time I got to the desk, it was in about 3 minutes. I changed that to substance misuse, psychology. I can't remember. One of them was definitely substance misuse. Yeah. And then I got a job over in Cumbria as a probation officer.
Okay. How long were you there for, the probation service?
16 years.
Yeah.
So I started out as a probation officer in Whitehaven on the West Coast, and then I got promoted to senior probation officer after 4 years. Then I did that for 4 years, I think. Then I managed the hostel, the bail hostel, for a while. Then I got promoted again. I kept on getting promoted almost by accident. I never really wanted any of these promotions, but either jobs were like merged or something, and I was the only one who could do it, so they had to give it to me. Otherwise, they'll be making me redundant, and that would have been illegal and things like that. So, but in the end, I ended up managing Cumbria and part of Lancashire. Oh yeah. So I was assistant chief officer. So I was quite high up. I was quite successful, even though I wasn't really bothered about it as much, particularly in my latter years, because I left in 2015. But I knew I'd want to be a writer for a couple of years by then. Yeah. When I was published in 2015, but I didn't have an agent, so it was a bit of a risk leaving because I was on a very good salary, and my house had been paid for and all that type of stuff. So I was sort of I was reasonably well off, particularly for up north. But I thought I want to be a writer. So when I got the opportunity to take voluntary redundancy, I took it.
Okay. I spoke to another ex-probation officer, Kate Mitchell. She's a writer based out in Sheffield. And she said that a lot of the sort of the case history she was investigating, they were sort of fertile ground for an imagination, for her to sort of build upon a writing career. Is that for yourself as well? Was that where the crime element, the genre that you're writing, is that based on your experiences, or is it just totally out the blue?
absolutely not.
Yeah.
There's two things I took out of probation. One's mildly relevant, the other is very relevant. The first one is that because I was so high up, I understood how Cumbria worked as a county. Because I was attending meetings with the chief constable and the head of children's services, the head of adult services. I was meeting with the private sector, with the voluntary sector, with other public bodies like health and education and all that type of stuff. So I got to understand how the county worked at the sort of at the top level. And because I've been a probation officer, I knew what it was like to just to be a normal person in the county. So that was useful. And I was sitting on various boards like the terrorism board and things like that. So I had insight into certain things that were going on. But the main thing I took out of probation was when one of the key things that's when I was in, it's actually not so much now, but we would write pre-sentence reports, which was basically an in-depth report. Sometimes running at 15, 16 pages on why an offender had committed the crime that they had offended, all the way from shop theft to double murder. I mean, it depends on what you got. And we had some horrific cases, as you can imagine. But it was the sort of lower end ones that were useful to me, because those were the ones that were presented to a magistrate's court rather than a Crown Court judge. Now, magistrates aren't legally trained. They are lay members of the community, lay people. So the greengrocers, they're just whatever. Anyone who fancies doing it after they've been approved and they've been on courses and there's a gap, then they're a magistrate. They have a legally trained. They have the clerk of the court who sits in front of them is legally trained and can advise them on matters of law. But otherwise, they are just ordinary members of the public. So what it trained us to do, and what we were told to do, was to write in very accessible language.
Okay, layman's terms.
Sorry?
In layman's terms, type of thing.
Yeah, it was. We would use short words. If a short word would do instead of a long word, we'd do that. Shorter sentences, just making it very easy to not just the words to understand, but also the idea that we're trying to get across as well. Because the offender also had to understand. And some of these people had. Well, a lot of them were completely illiterate, but even the ones with a basic grasp of literacy had to be able to understand what the report was saying about them. So that's, to me, and that followed up because I'd sort of trained my brain to write in a very accessible way. That sort of carried over into my novels. So my novels actually do read. There's no flowing, flowery literary language. It's quite direct and quite sparse, and that's just the way I've trained myself. Right, because until I was writing court reports, I hadn't written anything since I was at school. I didn't do any writing. I wasn't required to do any writing when I was in the army. So that was what I took out probation. I mean, the crimes and things. I mean, most crimes are committed by nasty, unpleasant people doing nasty, unpleasant things, not particularly interesting. And certainly, I tend to write about serial killers or people with a plan that's took 20 years to come to fruition, that type of thing. So nothing relevant to type of idiots I was dealing with.
Okay. So what was the first novel that you wrote? This was the Avison Fluke series. Well, there's two novels.
Avison Fluke.
Avison.
And I was very ill actually back in 2003, and I thought I would write about. I just wanted to write it down because it was. I mean, I was an inpatient in the RVI in Newcastle for 6 months.
Cancer treatment.
It was sorry.
It was cancer treatment. Was that?
It was, yeah, and it was quite dark, but a lot of funny things happened. I mean, because I've got quite a dark sense of humor anyway. So I thought I wanted to write about it, and I did. And I started, and I thought I'm not enjoying doing this at all. So, but I'd always enjoyed reading, and I was still reading. So I thought I'm going to write a fiction book, and I'm going to give my protagonist exactly what I had, and that way I'll be writing about it, but it won't be that personal because I'll be able to give him different things to what I have, and I'll make him far cooler than I am. That type of stuff. So that's what I did. So I wrote the first few thousand words, and I submitted it to the Crime Writers Association debut Dagger for their 2013 competition. I got shortlisted.
Brilliant.
And we went down to London and we met a few people, and from that, I sort of got a little bit of the bug. And an agent said, "Can I see the full manuscript?" I didn't have it then.
Yeah.
So I spent the best part of 2013 writing it.
Yeah.
Sent it off. She absolutely hated it. Really destroyed it. But it was really actually constructive feedback. It was disappointing feedback. It wasn't what I wanted, obviously, but it was really useful.
Yeah.
So I completely rewrote it and then submitted it to a publisher, and he took it. It was a small independent called Caffeine Nights. And by then, when it was just out, and I met an agent called David Headley. I'd left Probation by then, and I'd given him a copy of my book. And he said, "If you've got anything else, send it to me on an exclusive. I'd like to see the next book that you write." So I did, and he signed me on the basis of that, which was the second Fluke book, Body Breaker. He actually wanted me to rewrite it as the first in a series, first in a new series, and I called him. I said, "Look, it's probably going to be easy for me just to write a brand new series from scratch." So I wrote the puppet show with obviously new characters and stuff. So that's how that sort of the new series started. And then David got me with one of the big publishers for the new series. And then they bought the Avis and Fluke series off my old publisher, just because they wanted everything in the same publishing house. So they reissued them with new covers and stuff without much fanfare. They just wanted them out, so that if people wanted every MW Craven book there was, then they were getting all the money. There wasn't some little publisher getting benefit from all the marketing and publicity that they were arranging and doing.
The names, your main characters' names, they're quite striking. Is there a story behind them, behind Avison and Washington?
Avison is simply because it was my mother's middle name.
Okay.
And she died before it became published, which was obviously sad. So I I thought that was just a little touch.
A homage.
And the Washington Post thing was a fluke, really. I mean, well, actually, it was a complete fluke. I didn't have a name for him at all. I was at least halfway through the novel, and I misheard somebody say Washington Post, because I was reading about the American election cycle, and I burst out laughing at something that Donald Trump had said, and the person who heard me just said, "What are you laughing at?" I said something in the Washington Post, and they said, "What's the Washington Post?" And I thought, that's my name. And I quickly Googled it to make sure there wasn't anyone else out there called Washington Post. And there's actually a politician from Georgia in like the 18th century or something. So I thought, well, that's not going to bother me too much. So I used that, and then I had to rewrite the book actually, because you can't call somebody Washington and not explain it. And when I actually had the name's provenance, he became a lot darker. So I had to rewrite part of it. And then I had to rewrite Tilly, because Tilly at that point wasn't as sweet and naive as she is, but I needed to counterbalance his sort of darkness. So a lot of it's just all sort of tumbled together and became a sort of a little thing that seems to work and that people enjoy reading and I enjoy writing, which is all you can ask. But a lot of it has just fallen together by accident, but there wasn't any great planning involved.
A lot of your books, they've won awards, haven't they? Crime Writers Awards, shortlisted. Some of them,
The puppet show won the Crime Writers Association Gold Dagger, which is pretty much the best award there is. I mean, you can't get a higher award for a crime writer. Even the Americans will acknowledge that the Gold Dagger is the award. I mean, I really wasn't expecting to win it at all. Hence my speech at the ceremony was a bit garbled, because up until the short, nobody thought I was going to win. So because it was a live ceremony, and it was the last in-person one there's been actually because of COVID. And the Gold Dagger is the last one that's read out that you don't know who's won. The Diamond Dagger is read out after, but that's a lifetime achievement award, and that's announced like months before. But the Gold Dagger is the last one where they get open an envelope and they go, "The winner is blah." So it was about 11:15 at night, and my agent had been like feeding me champagne since 5 o'clock. And every time, because we had like a big table, and every time somebody went to the bar, and they just brought me back some beer and things like that. So we were drinking about 6 hours, and then I had to go and make a speech because I just nobody was expecting. My agent wasn't, because he said, "I think you're going to win." And I said, "I don't know." No, he said, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "I'm not actually, because I don't think I'm going to win." And I said, "I think you will. Black Summer's a brilliant book." And I said, "Black Summer's not up for it. It's the puppet show." And he went, "Ah, shite." Even now, I thought, "Wow, David doesn't think I'm going to win. I can enjoy the evening now." And then I did, which was the thing. But that book was shortlisted for a lot of awards that year. It was the Glass Bell, the Dead Good Readers Award. There was some, I can't remember. There was about 5 awards in total, and it won. I won Author of the Year that year in Cumbria as well, which was nice. So it did well, and Black Summer was longlisted, the year after, which was pretty cool. And then The Curator was longlisted last year. So Dead Ground, which was out last year, will be eligible for it this year. So I'm hoping to make it 4 out of 4. But I mean, that would be that'd be ridiculous if that happened. But, it's good. The series is being very well received. You can't ask for more. And the sales are growing year on year. I mean, the sales are still climbing quite rapidly. So it hasn't plateaued yet. So new readers are still discovering it. So it's good.
Your books are on the Sunday Times best-selling. What kind of volume of sales do you have to get onto the Sunday Times best-selling list?
Well, it's weird actually, because if it's the hardback one that everybody wants to be on, and so Dead Ground was the first time I've made the Sunday Times list, and it can be anything. It depends, because it's not like a platinum record type thing. If you sell 50,000, you're platinum, or whatever the numbers are. It's purely a top 10. So you are in competition with whatever books are out that week. So if you happen to be unlucky and you publish a book the same week as, say, J.K. Rowling and Richard Osman and Mark Billingham and Peter James and Stuart McBride and Ian Rankin and Martina Cole, then you're not going to get anywhere near, because they're going to outsell you by 10 to 1. But sometimes you can get in with low, like 1,000 and something. And that year, I got number 7. I can't remember the exact numbers actually, but it was a very good hardback. So I mean, I don't know the exact numbers. I used to, but I was quite interested in that type of thing. But the hardback's a weird thing, because it's very few exceptions. It's paperbacks that everybody makes the money on, the mass market paperbacks, because they're so cheap to produce.
Yeah, of course.
They are bought by supermarkets by the thousand, sometimes by the tens of thousands. Whereas, I mean, the puppet show, when it was out, I think Waterstones took 50 copies of the paper, of the hardback. So you're dealing with that type of thing. For Dead Ground, they took 1,000. So I mean, that's just sort of how my name is much better known now. So sales have gone very well, and you're quite. I forgot to say that I'm a Sunday Times bestseller now, which is pretty cool. Because you can't ever not be a Sunday Times. It's a binary thing. You either are or you're not. You're not like you are one year, then you're not the next year. As soon as you're a Sunday Times bestseller, you're always a Sunday Times bestseller. Just like I'm always now a CWA Gold Dagger winner. That's always. I'm not the current holder, but I am. I'm still on that list with John le Carré and Ian Rankin and some Dennis Lehane and some of the giants of the.
That's brilliant.
Genre. Stephen King was shortlisted. He hasn't won it. So if I ever see Stephen King, I've got a dagger. You haven't, mate. You might have like 300 million pounds, but I've got a dagger.
We're fighting who's got the best dagger. A lot of your books have gone into translations as well, haven't they? They're in Spanish, and I'm looking at one now. I think it looks like Japanese writing to me. Looking on your Amazon page.
I'm in 22. It's been translated into 22 or 23 languages, including Japanese, Taiwanese, Yiddish, Bangladesh. Some countries, like some unusual, they're not unusual countries, but it's countries that I wouldn't have expected a publisher to have taken any notice from a daft lad from the north of England. We're doing quite well in Europe. We've got the big 3 covered, which is Spain, France, and Germany. They very much like me in Portugal and Denmark, and a few of those countries doing very well. I'm doing very well in Japan, though. I mean, they absolutely love the series in Japan, mainly for Tilly, I think. But they spent a lot of money on the first 2 books, and we've just spent a lot of money on books 3 and 4 as well. So they've just sort of committed to the next lot. So that's pretty cool as well.
Do you think the location has something to do with that as well? You know, the Cumbrian, you know, you sort of in the Lake District area as well.
I really don't, because there's other writers writing about equally beautiful places. I think William Shaw, good mate of mine, writes about a lovely part of the Fens, I think it is. And you've got Ellie Griffiths, who's writing about her part of Norfolk. And if it is Norfolk, I can't actually remember. I'm probably doing myself a huge disservice here. Ian Rankin's obviously writing about Edinburgh and things like these, like really fascinating places. So mine is just one of it. I mean, I think it helps in England because it doesn't sort of annoy anyone in the Lake District. So if you sound as though you've got a Liverpool accent. I apologise.
Yeah.
So if there's a book set in Manchester, for example, that might think, Scousers might not read it because it's set in Manchester, and vice versa. And Newcastle might not read a book set in Sunderland. And
so it's neutral ground.
Kind of but there's no the sort of Lake District is sort of owned by the national psyche, if you know what I mean. Everyone has been to the Lake District. Everyone's mainly got pleasant memories of the Lake District. So and it's nice to read a book set about in somewhere you've been. I mean, I like books set in London that actually use real places, because I go to London quite often now to meet with publishers and agents and TV people and things like that. And it's nice to start recognizing these places. They're not just like names of things on a page. We've been there, And that street's not there. They used to make it up and all that type of stuff. So that helps in England. In the wider sense, I don't know. I think it is the relationship between Poe and Tilly that people like, and the banter that they have, and it makes people laugh, which is if you make someone laugh, unless they don't like laughing. I know some people don't. Nobody I know, but I've heard. But or some people just don't think things are funny, and then will just think it's stupid. But if you can make someone laugh, then you've made them enjoy whatever that was. If you're laughing, you're generally happy.
It's pleasant, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a pleasant experience, and I think that is the key to my series, because I've had people who contact me, so I could just read about them two going shopping, which is nice. And I think, perhaps I could just do that then. Quite an easy book to write. Poe and Tilly go to the Metro Centre. So that's what I think. I mean, I try to use the landscape whenever I can. Sometimes I use it as a obstacle, like if it's snowing or the tide's coming in, like I did in the Curator, and they need to get somewhere, but the tide's coming in. So there's a few little things. The landscape's very handy because Cumbria's got virtually everything you could read in a whatever crime novel you fancy doing. You can. So they've got heavy industry. They've got MOD sites, they've got a city, they've obviously got picture perfect villages, they've got a coast, they've got marshes, they've got lakes obviously, and they've got mountains, and they've got towns. So the only thing don't really have is a significant gang culture, but I just make if I need that, I make it up. I'll just pretend we do have. So Cumbria as a thing, it works for me. It means I can tell the stories that I want to tell without actually having to make up somewhere. I know Van McDermott, for one of her series, she actually just did make up a big Yorkshire town, and that worked well for her. But I thought, well, it wouldn't work for me. It's just I'd rather than have to invent every single. So I'll just set it somewhere I know. So if Poe turns left out of a street, I know I don't have to think of a name for a street because I know what the streets go. So that works for me. But I mean, really, it's everyone finds their own way of writing the book. There's no right way or wrong way.
I think that I do enjoy when I'm reading myself. You know, that bit of touch of authenticity. You know, that place does exist. I've been there. I know where this character's, what he's saying, she's saying. But Mike, you mentioned just before the London visits, I think, the television. Have you got a Mr. and Mrs. Netflix knocking at your door? Is there some kind of television or film deal on?
No, I mean it was incredibly close to a BBC deal last year, to the point it it was up to with the top guy, a fellow called Piers, someone who is the person who says yes or no to all drama at the BBC.
Yeah.
And he had been working with the television company that had bought the rights quite closely on the script, and he'd asked for more. He wanted the script writer to make more of Poe's relationship with his father, which I don't touch on in the books at all, really. So they wanted to make it more emotional rather than. They just wanted to make it set for TV rather than the book. Which they did that. They were very. I mean, the TV company would email me every week. So this is where we're at with things. We're very, very hopeful. And then COVID hit, and Black Lives Matter. All the protests did, and the sort of commissioning landscape changed a bit, and they were looking for underrepresented groups to commission for a while, just to redress the balance. Quite rightly, actually. I mean, it's. I'm not bitter about it at all, because I think we've seen some excellent dramas recently that were commissioned around about the same time that was going to be commissioned. So I've just had the rights returned back to me, and I won't be letting them go for a while, actually, because when Studio Lambert bought it, they only had the puppet show because they bought it a year before the book was out, so they were really keen. And but that's all they had. They had the puppet show, which is a book that doesn't necessarily, it's not an easy book to put on the screen, I thought, but they did a good go. But now there's 6 books, a novella, about 9 short stories. So the next lot that come along will have a much richer tapestry to pick and choose from. So if you look at, I mean, my favourite crime drama of recent years is Bosch.
Michael Connolly, my favourite detective procedural. I've got a whole bookshelf full of Michael Connolly.
Yeah, I've got everything. And I haven't read his last one yet, just because I've had so much reading on, but it's on my shelf. I've got a signed copy. But for the TV series, they don't just use one book; they use 2 or 3 books.
They merge them, don't they? Yeah, seeing that.
Yeah, they do, and it works really well. So I think that my books would work better if we're going to do a long-running thing. You want to have 2 or 3 things happening, not just the one. And I certainly wouldn't start with the puppet show. I maybe wouldn't even do the puppet show at all. I would maybe start with Dead Ground or possibly The Curator. So it's the TV thing. It'll happen at some point, but I'm in no massive worry. I don't need the money at the minute, and the money's nice because they just throw silly money at you. The TV people sometimes, and sometimes they'll buy it just to stop it being developed, because they've got. Well, just imagine a TV company out there is producing a crime series set in the Lake District, and then they hear about Mike Craven's got a book. They'll buy it just so, and then they won't do anything with it, just to
on
stop
the shelf.
Somebody else developing it. And that happens quite often, and it's an accepted thing. And sometimes you just think, right, well, it wasn't going to get made in the last 2 years anyway. They're offering like 40 grand just to do nothing. What? We'll just take the 40 grand and just we'll be happy about that in 18 months' time. I'll get the rights back. Somebody else wants to have a go, then they can do that.
Give me a ring of the next book you don't want to produce. Brilliant. You're writing full time, and is this your full time occupation?
Yeah, it has been since 2015. And my wife's now working full time for it as well, doing a lot of the stuff that I'm just A, not very good at, and B, haven't got the time for.
Marketing, your publicity stuff.
Well, I mean, that's all done by my publisher, but I mean the social media stuff, I mean, I'm still doing that, but Joanne will take it over at some point. But she's now doing all the contract work, all the foreign rights stuff, because every translated deal is a brand new book deal. It's like so it's not like you've got one publisher and they've produced it in 22 languages. You've actually now got 22 publishers, 23, 24 if you include the American and all that type of stuff. And they all have people asking you questions all the time and wanting things and wanting headshots and bios and this, it's too short or it's too long, that type of thing. So it was getting in the way because it was happening so often. And there's all the tax things and things. So Joanne's now working full time on it, and she's sorting out the website and getting the newsletter up and running, because I've been doing it and it's not my, I'm not good at it, where she is. So she's taking that, and it means we can take money out of the business as well, which is it's more tax efficient to do that, to pay her a wage as well as me.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. The website I find is excellent. So I'm going to put links to all of this. When I put the edit out, we're running down on time now. I know you've got a book signing later. You've got an appearance in the book.
It's actually I'm doing an in conversation event with Mari Hanna, who's a crime writer from Corbridge. She's got a book out. I think it was out on Thursday. I think it was published on Thursday, and she asked me if I would do an event with her in Carlisle because she wants to try and move into Carlisle, and I've known her a while actually. She's a friend of mine, so I was happy to. So yeah, there's about 40 people turning up, I think. So that'll be good. We'll go to the pub beforehand if we get time, which we will have now actually. So thank you for moving this up an hour.
No problem at all. Yeah. As I said, well, the time looks like it's run down on us, but I really appreciate the time spent with you. Really enjoyed it.
No problem.
And I don't know, hopefully, Adam, maybe you can have another chat in about a year's time when you're there on the big screen or on the television screens.
Well, yeah, I'll have done something, even if it's just fallen over and banged my head. Well, there's always something happening.
Brilliant. Oh, once again, then, Mike, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Terry.
And good luck for tonight. Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
We finished?
Yeah, done. Yeah, I'll turn it off. Cheers, Mike.
Right.
I know.
Right, cheers, mate. I'll get away because we are on a bit of a
and I understand. Yeah.
But thanks for that. That was quite a nice chat. I enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. I'll edit this out. I'll either get it out tonight or it'll be early tomorrow morning.
If it's tonight, I probably won't share it tonight.
I know.
If it's tomorrow, I'll share any links that you send us, obviously, and I'll put them across my channels and things.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay.
Good.
Right.
Nice one. All right.
Yeah,
Take care.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Ta-ra.